So today I'm just going to start with OpenAI's Canvas, right, which is a new way to interact with ChatGPT. Historically, I'm really interested in these kind of updates. I've been a big fan of Claude's artifact feature, which is exactly what they're trying to do with Canvas here. I don't know, sir, in addition, you've used ChatGPT quite a bit, but many times when we interact with ChatGPT or Claude or one of these large language models, it's difficult to track context, right? Like say you're creating a book or a paper, or you're reviewing something or generating code, right? It becomes difficult to understand what's going on, right? You give it some input and then there's a lot of revision, and somewhere it becomes difficult to get a track of what's going on, right? Have you faced this, Dushan?
Yeah, in fact, many times if I'm doing some, I want to learn more about a particular research paper, and then I'm just kind of asking questions that are interesting terms that I'm kind of learning for the first time. But then putting them into one session, sometimes it's helpful, but still it's confusing. I'm looking forward to see what you have in the box for us.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just becomes very difficult to track all of this, right? So that's why they've introduced Canvas. I would say it's a follow-up to Claude's artifact, right? They're trying to do something very similar, and it's not there yet, right? It seems to be moving in that direction. It's an early beta of sorts. If you have the pro version of OpenAI's subscription, then you'll probably get access to this within the next few days, right? So what it does is, let's say you're creating a document, it'll let you speak about the document, but create it on the right hand side, right? It's I would say a more a visual update, right, or an interaction update where it does pretty much the same thing. It's not a newer model like O1 was, right? It's the same 4.0. Eventually, they'll probably bring in 4.01 or some of these other models as well. But essentially, it's the way you interact with the entire system, right? So this is the blog post which talks about what is Canvas. Essentially, now you have two pages, right? So as a designer, right, what you've done, I'll just break this down, right? They have added some tools or some quality of life updates on the UI. That's pretty much it, right? So as a document creator, you want to improve the wording of some certain things. You want to remove emojis or add emojis. You want to explain, get something explained. You want to understand why something is working in such a way, or why something was generated, right? Or rewrite something. So it provides a lot of these tools in a much easier, more visual manner, right? That's what this update is, right? So what can you do today? Eventually, you'll be able to do a lot of things like Claude's artifacts feature. You can do pretty much anything with artifacts. But with ChatGPT today, you can review code, right? Okay, so you can code on in Canvas. You can write in Canvas. All kinds of different writing tools are added to it. This is the second thing you can do. Then you can do a bunch of other things, which I'll actually show, right? You can create images, you can summarize text, you can do pretty much all the same things, but it's essentially better to show you what this means, right? So typically, if you'd have a conversation, you just start and it will be the entire conversation, right? But now you have all these options. You have O1 preview, you have O1 mini, right, which Dishant had shown before, and you have the regular 4.0. But if you want to use this, you'll have to use the Canvas feature, which is in beta, right? So you have to select that and say, you can give it any prompts. Today, I'll show you how to code in Canvas, right? So I'll ask it, can you create a Tetris game for me, right? Now, coding is a very complex topic, and probably I'll show you a little bit more about coding, like Replit agents and Cursor and Claude and all these other tools for coding. But just to show you how Canvas works, so let's say, can you create a Tetris game in Python, right? Because it's easier to kind of explain it and easier to run it, right? So I'll just say, can you create a Tetris game using Python, right? And let's just run it and see what happens, right? So that's it. That's Canvas, right? Essentially, what it does is, rather than continuing the conversation in the same thread, which is what you definitely typically see, it does it on the side, right? This gives you a permanent kind of reference of what's happening, and then you can converse with the model and kind of improve things. And what I'll do is I'll just run this. So ironically, to run this, you can't run it on the system itself, which is a problem here, right? Like, I think it's the first version of Canvas. That's why you can't do it. In Claude, if you're using Claude artifacts with Sonnet, you can actually run this inside the environment, which is super important because you don't want to get out of this, right? But at least it's a good first start. right? Okay. I'm just going to copy this. It's generated all the code, right, which is in Python, and it's using some libraries in Python, right? So now what I've done is I've created a Replit instance. Replit is another cloud-based editor. It's very popular on mobile devices, and people love coding and learning on Replit essentially, right? So it's got the entire editor interface over here. This is a web browser-based editor, right? Like it's got the Python file. I've just told it that I'm creating a Python project, right? So what I'm just going to do is copy this code over there. This is what you have to do, right? So it's not fully independent yet. It will not enable you to code and execute things here, but it's pretty close, right? So I'm running on the free project. I'm just going to click on run, right? It's going to kind of run all of this in the cloud, and you see there's an error over there, right? Let's see. Okay. Let us take the error, okay, and I'm just going to run it back. Let's see if it's actually fixable, right? So these are the things it can do. It can just kind of update it and figure out, right, what's going on, and you see it's going to scan all the lines of code, and sometimes it actually makes a definite it makes changes, right? Let's see if this works. And now you can see, right, it's actually created the game. I'm also fairly new to Replit, so you can see, okay, I can actually use my keyboard and my cursor, okay, to actually move this around. The bottom is not visible because again, I have to just expand this properly. But you can see, right, it's a proper game. I can use my keyboard to change the order of things. Very simple but functional game, right? And it actually works, right? It's about 150 lines of code, right? It doesn't do everything. It uses the basic library of PyCame just to kind of create the basic mechanics of drawing and so on, right? But apart from that, it's a fully working game with different colors. You can actually customize it. You can make changes to it, right? So this is how you can run this in an external environment. You can run it on your device as well. But just to show you, right, like it actually works, and it's much easier, right? You can imagine if you're finding errors, right? You can actually copy paste it and it'll fix things. You can ask different things, right? You can add comments, right? Add logs, or just ask it to change this to, let's say, JavaScript. It'll do it in JavaScript, right? So there are some predefined prompts, right? So that it's just easier for you, right? And in a similar way, you can also create, stories, or you can write on the platform. And there are a lot of great writing tools, right? Especially for authors, right? People who are very into language, right? And it can change the tone, right? It can do a lot of those things without losing your train of thought, right? Which is the important thing. Actually close this, and you can go back to the previous interface, which was already there. But then you have this option of opening the canvas and selecting which version. So there are different things that you can do over there. For example, today there are 2 different things it created with Canvas. You can switch between them and kind of ask it to make changes, right? Very simple update, but very powerful, right? Because now you can do different things in it. You can actually select something and ask ChatGPT questions, right? Please explain this. Slightly different kind of context, but kind of it gives you that ability to interact on a different level with ChatGPT, right? So how's this going right now? I think it's a great starting point. There are few things you can do with it. You can't do much apart from like language coding and so on. But I expect this will be the future, right? Although this is a follow-up step to artifacts. With artifacts, what else can you do? You can actually export this piece of code, right? So I could actually run this piece of code in artifacts, run it over here. I can share it with you so you can run it on your end. I can create interactive ones so that I can update the artifact even though I'm not a creator. So artifacts gives you all those abilities, which is, I think, better than what ChatGPT can do. I think it's a great starting point, right? This is one of the newest features. And, what we'll do in probably an upcoming episode is see, right, like how Replit has its own agents and Cursor has its own thing, right? How all of them compare with respect to coding, right? Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's really interesting update. If you're on the beta, definitely check it out. Really interesting kind of improvements, right? Which are more quality of life, less about the model, but just generally makes people more productive.